to spill the secrets.
This is Universal Secrets with Tiffany Mack and Kevin Hale.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means.
It's Universal Secrets with Tiffany Mack and Kevin Hale. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Doing good.
Good to see you as usual. Date night with Tiffany. It's what I do on Tuesday nights.
That's what his grandson says.
No,
Don't make it sound creepier than it already sounds.
No, it's the grandson. Tiffany. Tiffany, we before we get started, we gotta do a quick promo. We're a little over a week from an event we got coming up. October 8th and 9th?
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, spill the beans.
Well, we're looking at Contact at the Compound next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend.
Right.
And we are really excited that everyone is still on board with us and ready to come and share experiences. We are going to do a hike and do a little bit of investigations and watch stars. And I've already registered our event with the ET Let's Talk community, which is the CE5 event that's taking place on the same night. So we'll be joining in that adventure together. So Kevin, you're going to be part of a night where we try to contact extraterrestrials. What do you think about that? Does that scare you to death?
Oops, no. I'm ready as ever. And if there is a night or a weekend that somehow, some way we can pull this off where, I get to be on the inside, the inner circle, not on the outside, but you, Terry Lovelace, Serena Nablina, Micah Hanks,
Rebecca Jositano,
yeah,
Jamin Olivencia.
Yeah, so there's some well, good mojo is the right word, but there's some people that's got experiencer, history.
Yeah. And that's part of the anticipation that I've been having is wondering how all of these people and our energies combined. I'm excited to see what it's going to do. If it's going to create a little bit of more attractive nature to our area and maybe bring in some more energies. We'll see. I don't know. I'm a little flustered, but excited. I don't think I can really wrap my head around what is really going to happen next weekend in my house.
We're a little over a week away, and from me to you have kicked ass with this event.
I may not have hair by then.
You will. I'm very proud of you, and I'm very excited, nervous. I mean, it's one of the events that I'm a little nervous about, but we'll talk more about Contact at the Compound 2. Again, October 8th and 9th. We are live streaming via our Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube channels, the video. Our audio is on ERT Radio shows. Thank you, Ron, Andy, and Bobby. Tonight, Tiffany, we again go back to our go-to. It's UFOs, ufology, aliens, not lions and tigers and bears. But this is one where in 1961, September of 1961, September 19th to be exact. So 60 years ago, this incident, this situation, this event happened that, that if they say Roswell is that, the historic UFO crash, whatever, but if there's a historic alien abduction scenario, this is it.
It is. You're right.
How
Yeah.
do you remember like when you first heard about it?
You know, when we talk about my past and my experiences, I'm still fairly fresh into
Mhm.
the UFO world. And, even though I've had many abduction scenarios and visitations, I didn't really know the history and the lore. This is all within the past 5 to 6 years new to me, and, I wasn't raised into it like our guest was. This is something that is still fresh. I'm learning about these stories every day. Yes, this is one of the first ones, but I would have to say it was only about 6 or 7 years ago that I even recognized that Betty and Barney Hill had this amazing experience that put them on a different path than a lot of other people. And I'm really excited to get into this conversation and let our guest tell us about all of her experience as a family member and a true investigator.
She is a true investigator in the sense, ufologist, author, recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. Kathleen Marden. Kathleen, welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good. Nice to be with you this evening.
Thank you. Now, Tiffany, I saw a show you did. Kathleen was part of a roundtable. Was that
Yes,
Peter or Grant?
Peter Robbins.
Peter
Robbins.
Robbins.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we love Mr. Robbins. Um, Kathleen, I kind of gave the little spiel. 60 years. This has been 60 years in the making, if you will. You, if I'm looking at my notes right, it was kind of like since 1990 is when that 90ish range when you really dove into the whole UFO, the research, the complexity, all the layers and levels of ufology.
It was, yes. Of course, I was 13 when it happened. So I was there. Betty called my mother the day they arrived home. And I was there from the very beginning. I saw the unfolding of everything. But I had just a traditional career. I went into psychiatric social work and then into education, and never intended to become a UFO researcher. And I ended up, it was just sort of serendipitous. I was extraordinarily ill and I could no longer work. And I had a poor prognosis. And I thought, well, I had been accustomed to intellectual stimulation. My Aunt Betty Hill lived nearby. And so maybe I could just write her biography because I really enjoyed writing. And so we started out, it was 1988, 1990, something like that, just a slow start. Well, I was recovering enough so that I could be up a little bit. And Betty started to share information with me. And she had files, years and years and years of files. And I played devil's advocate and I interviewed her. And then I read everything that had ever been written on that case, as far as I know, from the skeptic side, from the disinformant side, and from the UFO investigators' side, some who got it right, some who got it wrong. And then Betty gave me the hypnosis tapes, 10 hours of hypnosis tapes with Dr. Benjamin Simon. And he had hypnotized Betty and Barney separately and reinstated amnesia at the end of each session. So they could not share information. One did not know what the other had said. And so I transcribed all of the tapes, and I was really a poor typist in those days, but it took me a long time to do. But I did a comparative analysis of their statements vis-a-vis statements that Betty had made about her dreams. She had had 5 dreams starting 10 days after she and Barney arrived home after this event. And there had been a lot of speculation that Betty had only relived her dreams in hypnosis, and that Barney had somehow acquired that information by overhearing Betty talk about it, and that he had weaved this into his hypnosis sessions as well. So I wanted to determine whether or not they really had a UFO abduction event. And then I finally became convinced that they did. It's all in my book, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, which I've just updated for, it's the 60th edition, second edition of the book, but 60 years.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a long
And
time.
you were, that book also involved a pretty cool guy, some famous physicist and UFO historian, and
Yes. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you got to spend a lot of time with Stanton Friedman, didn't you?
We did over the years. Yes. Now he lived in New Brunswick. So he was up in Canada, and I was in New Hampshire when we wrote the first edition of the book. So we did a lot of talking on the telephone and writing chapters and sending them to one another through email attachments, that sort of thing. And I decided to ask Stanton to join me because when Betty was very ill, Betty died from lung cancer. And I was taking care of her during that time, from the time she was diagnosed until the time she passed away. And so I was doing a lot of research, a lot of work. And there was one thing that I just did not want to do, and that was to do the star map work, do the scientific investigation of the star map. Because when I do my research, I do groundbreaking research. I don't just read what somebody else writes and write it, because I know that so many people are inaccurate. So I had all of the files and had been writing slowly for a number of years when I asked Stanton. Betty said to me, if you ever need any assistance with the book, ask Stanton Friedman to help you with that, because I trust him implicitly. He's accurate. He's a very good researcher. So I had met Stanton for the first time, I think it was in 1971 or 72, and had seen him over the years. I really admired him. I went to UFO conferences just to see his lectures. That was the most important thing. I thought he was the best researcher, investigator, and lecturer out there. And so after the MUFON Symposium in Denver, Colorado in 2005, Betty had died in the fall of 2004. I asked Stanton to join me. I had already talked to him about it a little bit. We had met in New Hampshire to do a television show. And I told him a little bit about what I'd been doing, the writing. But it was at that symposium that I kept approaching his table his vendor table, and there was always a huge group of very tall men gathered around talking to him. And Stanton couldn't even see me through these men. I'm 5 feet tall. And so finally, I was terribly frustrated. And at the end of the day, I finally went back to that table. I was ready to give up. And there he was alone, just packing up the remainders of his books. And he said, "Can I help you? I'm putting my books away." And I said, "Yes, I'd like to talk to you about this book that I'm writing." And so he said, "Have you had dinner?" And I said, "No." So we went into the hotel restaurant and we sat and talked for probably a few hours. And he said, "I'm not going to make a commitment now. I want to come to your home. I want to see Betty's collection, and I want to read what you've written so far. And then I'll make a decision."
Yes, but you had the largest fish at the end of that line. You really were just dangling it in front of him, because guess who had most of the information?
Me.
You did.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So I let him copy anything that he wanted out of that archival collection that I was assembling for the University of New Hampshire. So Betty and Barney have an archival collection there, both in civil rights and with their UFO experience. And so Stanton came down that November after he had finished traveling for the year and visited for a few days, and went home with a huge stack of papers that I'd photocopied for him. And we spent hours again talking about our philosophies, about science, about his work on Betty's star map. That's where he came in. A lot of people don't know that his first big achievement in the UFO field was to find scientists to vet the work that amateur astronomer Marjorie Fish did on the star map that Betty drew as a result of a post-hypnotic suggestion from Dr. Simon. When she was on the craft, she had lost her fear of the one she called the leader, and the examiner had left the room she was in to go in to examine Barney. So she said to him, "I know you're not from around here. Where's your home port?" And he produced this three-dimensional star map. And there were 2 large stars in the foreground connected by 5 lines. And then there were other stars connected by solid lines. And then others further out connected by dotted lines.
Kevin, do you have that image?
I do.
I think that should be the first link.
Let's pull it up.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so
There
this
it
is the star map that
Yes.
Betty had remembered.
That is
And what did it resemble? It resembled Zeta Reticuli, is that correct? And then
Yes, the 2 stars in the foreground are stated Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, only they're inverted there. 2 is the one further out on all the other maps that I have.
Great, Tiffany, you give me the wrong map.
sorry, is that not the correct map here?
Well, yeah, it is. Somebody just mislabeled it.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Okay, so let's see.
Oops. Let me see.
We may be able to find the other one.
That's the same one, isn't it?
Yes, it is the same one.
Okay. We're gonna have to work with this one for now.
Yeah, but that's okay. So anyway, the one that says Zeta Reticuli 2 has eclipses another star that might even be a better match for a star that has planets that have life. So then you see that we have the sun and 82 Arendani and Tau Ceti.
Yeah.
So, important ones. There were 2 solid lines that went to the sun, to Alpha Mensae, to 82 Arendani, and to Gliese, 86.
So this
So
is someone who had not studied the star systems and galaxies and universes and planets and she had never studied anything like that, correct?
no, she hadn't. Betty was a social worker for the
Okay.
state of New Hampshire, and she worked in adoption and child welfare. She had never taken a course in astronomy. She
Mm.
really didn't have that much interest in it, but she had a very, very good memory, almost total recall,
Mm.
and very, very good for details. And so Dr. Simon told her to go home and to draw that map if it didn't bother her too badly and if she could remember it accurately. So she did that. And it was published in the first book that was ever written about their case. And Marjorie Fish, who was a school teacher in Ohio, saw it. And she thought that if this place really existed somewhere in our galaxy, that she might be able to find it. So those were in the days before computers, even before photocopying machines. So she had to go to the university and sit and copy the catalogs, all of the distance data, all of the characteristics of the stars in all directions out 55 light years from our sun.
That seems like an impossible task for anyone to do by themselves.
It was an enormous amount of work. She spent a good 4 to 5 years on that. I met her for the first time, I think it was in 1968 or 9, might have been 1969 when I met her for the first time. And she was very, very studious. Stanton told me that he was incredibly impressed with her, that she was highly intelligent, that she could speak with scientists more comfortably than with the general population. And she was single, she was a school teacher, and she worked building these three-dimensional models of our local galactic neighborhood out. It ended up being 54 light years from the sun.
That's amazing.
And she had built 14 of these using monofilament line and beads of various sizes and colors to represent the stars in our neighborhood. She was looking for sun-like stars. So still at the end of 1971, she didn't have a match. And we had made scientific progress. We'd made technological progress. And a new Gliese catalog was released that had better distance data. And with that, she collected all of that information again, took it back, rearranged some of the stars in one of those models that she had built, and then she had a match, which was just remarkable. And so she wanted scientists who would vet her work, but she didn't know where to look. So she spoke with Coral Lorenzen, who was the director or co-director of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And she called Stanton and asked him if he would meet with Marjorie when he went to Ohio. So he did finally meet with Marjorie. And he found scientists to vet her work. Alan Hynek, Dr. Alan Hynek was one of them from Project Blue Book, who was at that time at Northwestern University. He was the head of the Dearborn Observatory and chairman of the astronomy department. Finally, the astronomy department at Ohio State University did a computerized model of it, and they said that it was accurate, both Dr. Hynek and the astronomy department. Dr. David Saunders, who was one of the chief investigators on the Condon project, and he was the one who had released the information about the trick memo. The trick would be to convince the general public that this was a scientific effort, but to the scientific community, there would be very little chance of finding a saucer. So David Saunders was a statistician, and he did a statistical analysis, and he also said that it was accurate. And then Stanton published the first article that was published on Marjorie's work. And then he contacted Astronomy Magazine, and Terence Dickinson from Astronomy Magazine published an article which received a huge number of readers. And as a result of that, he also published a booklet, kind of a small booklet, shiny cover, on it as well, the Zeta Reticuli incident. And as Terence Dickinson, the astronomer, looked at it, he noticed that all of the stars in the pattern are in a plane. Stanton used to say, like pepperoni on a pizza, as opposed to raisins in a thick loaf of raisin bread. Terence Dickinson said that means that travel from one star to the next would be much easier, and the route was logical. In fact, if we lived on Zeta Reticuli in that star system, and we were exploring other nearby star systems, the routes on that map would be exactly where we would go.
That's amazing. Gosh, just thinking about that is fantastic.
And we're only talking, what, 30 light years? I mean, it's not
39 light years.
Yeah, it's not
away,
far from the big picture. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so there's more to it. All of the stars on Betty's map are sun-like stars, whereas only 5% of the stars in our local galactic neighborhood out 54 light years are sun-like. And all of the sun-like stars in that volume of space are on Betty's map. Some skeptics have said, oh, you could throw marbles into a sandbox and identify a star pattern. You could not identify a star pattern with all of the characteristics that Betty's has.
I'm wondering this is just my ignorance here. When were people calling the short grays Zetas? When did that start happening? Did that happen after them?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Betty and Barney's case was the first scientifically investigated UFO abduction in the United States.
Right.
And the event happened on September 19th and into the early morning hours of September 20th, 1961. But it wasn't widely reported. They reported it to the Air Force and to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena.
And this was about a 3-hour abduction, correct?
Oh, about 2.
2 hours. Okay.
Yes.
And
well, they were missing 2 to 3 hours. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So they were driving along the road and they were heading home, and they ended up almost 40 miles down the road with a few hours missing. Is that correct?
Well, there's a lot more to it than that, because the craft was traveling beside the car and coming in closer and closer. And in Lincoln, New Hampshire, on Route 3, that was the main highway in those days, the craft swooped ahead and stopped over the highway about 200 feet above Betty's and Barney's car. In fact, Barney pulled the car into the middle of the road so he wouldn't be directly under the craft. If he had been, I'm sure they would have just been taken up into it then. But instead, he stopped the car, got his binoculars, and he stepped out and looked up at the craft. And both he and Betty, in the early reports, stated that it was just a large disc-shaped craft. There was a row of windows around the forefront of the craft, and there were intense blue-white lights shining through. It appeared to be lighted on only one side. It had been rotating, but by the time it swooped down, it had stopped rotating. And Barney stepped back from the car, and when he did, the craft moved to an adjacent field and descended lower. Now it was only about 100 feet away from Barney. And he stood there. He was a confirmed skeptic. He thought this was impossible. And he was having really some difficulty, ontological shock as a result of this, because when he put the binoculars up to his eyes, he saw figures looking back at him. And they were dressed in black, shiny uniforms. This was in all of the early reports. He never forgot this, like the skeptics would like you to believe. And all of a sudden, all but one of these figures turned and moved to what appeared to be a panel. And when they did that, their arms went up in the air, and he could see them now from the tops of their heads down to about their knees. And when that happened, little red lights on fins slid out from the craft, 2 of them. And then something started to drop down from the bottom of the craft. We know today.
Is this like landing gear on a plane, or was it something different?
No, it was from the center of the bottom. So that was the carrier beam.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's sort of scary because, Kevin, if you remember my mom talking about the UFO that she and my stepdad saw back in like 89, she said that they went underneath of it, and she said all of a sudden the lights just went out. But what she didn't realize, and what scared her looking back at it, was if it had just gone into like covert mode and had still been there. She just sort of assumed that it went someplace else. Lights were gone, it was gone. But what she thought about later is, oh my God, what if we were underneath of it and something were to happen? They just didn't know what happened to it. But I can't imagine being underneath and having a beam of light decide, you're going to go away for a little bit today. And you're supposed to be driving the elevator. Yeah.
Barney became terrified when he saw this happening, and he thought that they had a plan for him, and that plan was to capture him. So he pulled the binoculars from his eyes so forcefully that he broke the leather strap and just ran screaming back to the car that they had to get out of there, or they were going to be captured. That's the name, why I named the book Captured. And so he got into the car. He was speeding down the highway, and he said to Betty, look up. I saw the craft coming in our direction as I was getting into the car. So she rolled down the window. She stretched her head out and looked up. And she didn't realize the craft was over the car at that moment, because she was looking for lights and all she saw was blackness. And the next thing she and Barney knew, they heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car, and the car vibrated, and an electrical tingling sensation passed through their bodies. And the next thing they knew, they were 35 miles down the highway, and they had vague memories of finding themselves on a dirt road with tall trees all around, of a roadblock, and of a fiery orb sitting on the ground. But they didn't know where or when, precisely that occurred. And they really had a need for human contact. Barney was looking for a police officer. They were looking for a restaurant that might be open. There was nothing open and no police officers on the way home. So they just drove to Portsmouth, expecting to arrive between 2 and 3 in the morning. And Betty's watch had stopped operating. It still says 5:15. because she arrived home. She thought that the wind-up watch needed to be wound, so she set it to 5:15. That was the time, and wound the watch, but it never worked again, nor did Barney's.
Wow. Now, Tiffany, keep in mind, if this scenario happened today, our reaction would be like, oh shit, this is happening to me. This is happening. For Betty and Barney, they're like, what
is this? Yeah.
What is happening? You don't have a
We've
clue.
been we've had that pushed down our throat for the past 30 years, and 20 especially, about the UFOs. We started watching it on X-Files was a big initiator for me, but it still is very interesting to hear what one of the first abductees had to say. So when you got that call, when your mom got that call and you heard your aunt was having an issue, how did that?
And you're 13 at this time.
Yeah,
right?
13. Yeah. How did that make your mom feel, and how did it make you feel? Did you feel like there was a new vulnerability, or did you believe that something happened that was nothing that couldn't be just figured out during the day?
Well, I definitely believed that something very serious happened to Betty and Barney. They were upset. They were afraid they had been exposed to ionizing radiation. We had a neighbor who was a physicist, and my mother offered to call him for his advice on what they should do.
Did they think automatically unidentified flying object and aliens?
Well, Barney had seen them. Yes, he knew they were not human.
Non-human, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and this was not a conventional craft. It was silent and just hovering in the air. And there's nothing conventional like that.
Did he? What was the size of this craft?
It was about 70 feet in diameter.
Okay. Oh.
It's like a house.
Yeah. Yeah, like a house. At 13, did you have any preconceived notion or just a mindset of UFOs in aliens at that time?
I'd never heard of it. Never heard of it in my life. And it was that day when my mother hung up the phone that we started talking about it. And I became very interested in astronomy at that point, and wanted a telescope, and my father bought me one, and we'd go out and look at the stars. And that was the day also that my mother told me that she had had an encounter with a UFO. And she always
And Betty and her were sisters, correct?
Sisters, yes.
Okay. All right.
And my mother and another sister always went grocery shopping on Friday night. And my father would stay home with my two brothers and I. And on this particular night,
I like him already. No groceries.
On this particular night, when my mother and my aunt were driving home, there was like a huge mothership just hanging over a field with smaller craft around it. And they just brought the car to a halt and ran to a house. They knew the people who lived there. We were in a small town, sort of out in the country. My grandparents had a farm. And so they knew everybody. And they ran to the house. And so this ended up being a multiple witness sighting. And
so right now we've established, there's a family connection here.
Yes, that's what we established in the studies that I've worked on with about 5,000 experiencers to date.
How far back? Does it go farther back?
I think that it probably goes back into the 20s or 30s and maybe earlier than that.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, I think so, just from what the ETs have told people.
I know for a fact that my grandfather's sister claims to have seen a UFO and the little beings that came out and were walking around and just walking around in the field. And that was something that, I always thought, oh, they're crazy. That's just rubbish. But now looking back and seeing how many people, especially the women in my family that have been impacted by this type of activity, now I'm like, wow, why wouldn't other people come forward with these stories? This is the best time to share, because we have the ability to tell these stories in person almost. It's I can talk to you in person. That's how it's amazing how fast our technology has
Yes.
sped up over the years.
Yeah, it's so great now that we have this information and we can disseminate it quickly.
Yeah.
Major General John Samford on July 29th, 1952, held the largest press conference since the end of World War II. And he was talking about the UFOs over Washington, D.C. And he began the conference by saying that these things have been seen in the air dating back to biblical times. And he said they come back over the centuries and they've been reported. And so I decided to take a look to find out if there were any reported during the 19th century. And I did find one case that was really interesting. It was a family, and they were out on a fishing boat. Their fishing boat fishing, and a craft lifted up out of the water and just hovered in front of their boat for a long time. I don't know if they were taken, but they were just scared to death. And as soon as the craft finally left, they went back to port. So, this has been going on for a long time. And why wouldn't they decide to pick up humans earlier and study us, or at least find out what we're like?
I have a feeling that there's been a lot of genetic manipulation. And part of this case that always struck me as interesting is the fact that they were what seemed to be tested in their reproductive and fertility aspects of their bodies. Can you tell us a little bit about what they believe was done to them, or what you believe was done to them?
Oh, sure. Well, Betty and Barney were taken onto the craft. Her dress was torn on the way. That was part of the evidence. Barney's best dress shoes were so deeply scraped he had to buy new shoes. He remembered under hypnosis that had happened when he was taken onto the craft. Well, when they were taken on, they were taken to separate examining rooms. The light was shining just through the walls. There were no light fixtures. There was a table in each room. And Betty also described kind of a chaise lounge, like a very modern type dentist chair chaise. I think that's probably why so many experiencers are scared to death about going
dentist.
to the dentist. As bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
So, anyway, they examined Betty first, and they were very interested in the human skeletal system, in our muscles. They moved her fingers, her arms, her joints, took her shoes off and examined her feet and her toes, looked inside her mouth, her ears, her eyes, and took skin scrapings. And they did the same thing to Barney, only when they went into his mouth, he was wearing dentures, and they pulled out the dentures and went into the room that Betty was in, and tugged on her teeth.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And they're looking at each other like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Hers is not coming out.
So
interesting.
they did that, and then Well, finally, while Betty was having her examination, which came before Barney's, the examiner removed her dress, tearing it in the process. He didn't know how to unzip a zipper. And she laid on the table, and he produced a long needle with tubing attached to it. And she said, well, what are you going to do with that? And he said, it's only a simple test. Don't worry about it. It won't hurt. And she said, it will hurt. Don't do it. And he did it anyway. He plunged the needle into her navel. Probably it could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe to look at her internal organs, maybe to extract ova. Bud Hopkins always thought that it was to extract ova.
Right.
But I know that men have had it too. So they must have been looking at internal organs as well.
Stop. Let me pump the brakes here, Kathleen. You were on, let me see, Ben Hansen. Does that sound right? You did a show with Ben Hansen?
Yes, I did.
Where the dress. That was the first time that I had heard of this story, where evidently there was something that was discovered on the inside of the dress, not on the outside. The inside. Am I saying that correct?
Well, there was residue on the outside.
Well,
yeast or a fungus.
Right.
But on the inside, Ben and I found some stains in the area of Betty's navel.
Right. Yeah.
And he looked at them and he said, these haven't been tested. Obviously, they hadn't been cut. And so I said, would you like to test them? And so I cut the sample out and I took it home and I sent it to a scientist that I know, and she did a DNA test. And the DNA test came out that it was Betty's DNA. And
and it was some type of abdominal fluid. It was not anything that could have been external.
Well, no, it did not bleed through, did not go through to the exterior of the dress. It was only on the lining.
Which is why it was never per se noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, there was something on the back too that had been tested early on, but it ended up being spider blood. What was here on the front by Betty's navel matched her DNA.
Very strange.
You know, that was pretty extraordinary. The problem was that we weren't able to determine if it was blood because the sample was just so old. It was definitely Betty's DNA, but it was either fluid or blood. We don't know for certain. But it came from Betty's body. That's the thing we do know.
Her dress and this collection of evidence, where is it located right now?
It's at the University of New Hampshire in an archival collection at the Milne Special Collections Library. And that's located in the Diamond Library.
Gotcha. Let's go back a little bit to the fact that outside of, take the whole UFO alien abduction scenario out of this equation. 1961, not exactly open-minded times.
Right.
Fair to say. So they're already, Betty and Barney, they're already, what's the right word I'm looking for here? They're not
breaking barriers.
Yeah, they're not in the greatest of light with, the rest of the world, or a lot of people. And for them to come out and make this statement, this claim, discuss this event, I just, that's where I look at the fact that they could not have been seeking, the fact that they're going to get more attention. First of all, people are going to see black and white, and then you're going to throw this fantastic story out?
Well, they didn't come forward with it. They
What?
talked to the Air Force. They talked to NICAP. They were willing to discuss it with scientists, with the couples club at their church, and with the family. And we were sworn to secrecy. And then with their best friends. That
Okay.
was the limit of who they were going to share this information with. They never intended to make this public. Barney was very active in the civil rights movement in
Right.
New Hampshire and in politics, as well as Betty. And so in 1965, it was a terrific year for Betty and Barney. They'd been invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration,
Yeah.
and they took me too. That was really wonderful. The same year, Barney received an award from Sergeant Shriver from the National Poverty Program because he and Betty and a group of people set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program with funds from the Office of Economic Opportunity. And he was the first chairman of the board of directors. So he received that award. He had also, through the Archdiocese of Manchester, New Hampshire, which is the biggest city in the state, set up a program, a literacy program. In those days, you had to take a literacy test to vote. So this was
I think we need to have that.
to be able to vote.
We need to reenact that.
And then, in addition to that, he was nominated and accepted to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights as a member from the state of New Hampshire. So this was a big deal. Barney was thought of very highly in the state. He was giving speeches, traveling around, just at the top of his game in what he wanted to do. And then they were contacted by a newspaper reporter named John Luttrell. And he said, I've been hearing from your friend, Laurie, all about you. And if you're nearly as nice as she says you are, I would just love to come up and interview you. And so he said, I promise you, I will not commercialize what you have to say in any way. And Betty and Barney said, no, we will not talk to you. And a couple of months later, he ran articles for 5 days in the Boston Traveler. He had talked to the Air Force. He had talked to everyone who knew anything about this. And he had done his own investigation. In fact, I was angry with him for years, but then finally I forgave him when I found a letter that he had written to Stanton saying that he had interviewed 12 to 14 people who saw the craft that night. And he knew that it was the same craft from the locations that they were standing in. They were in separate locations. And he drew lines from where Betty and Barney were at any particular time to where they were standing and where the craft was. And that's how he determined that they were viewing the same craft. So,
were there multiple abductions with them, or was it sort of a one and done with Betty and Barney?
Barney, I think, was taken another time because he went missing when they were down visiting the family, and he would always walk on the backlands of the farm. And he went missing one day, and so my mother went looking for him, and she saw a craft rising up out of the woods.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he died very young. He was only 46 when he had a massive cerebral hemorrhage in 1969. But Betty did continue to have contact, but she, during her lifetime, would never speak of it because the disinformants were simply horrific. in that time frame. They painted Betty and Barney with a different brush, and especially Betty. They made her into a UFO kook, a lifetime sci-fi enthusiast, a lifetime UFO
Yeah.
enthusiast, someone who was fantasy prone, someone who was mentally ill. She was none of those things. None of those things. But they lied through their teeth, and they took that general scenario and they molded it into a different story, section by section, and then added speculation. And that's why at the beginning you were saying, weren't Betty and Barney, they were traveling along and they saw this light in the sky and then they had the missing time. There was so much more to that. And it's in the original documents and it's in my book, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience.
Do you feel that there is an end game when it comes to the extraterrestrials with humanity?
According to the studies that I've worked in, there are a variety of objectives that the non-humans have. They came in and started to take a lot of people during the times when we were detonating nuclear weapons. And I know that they were checking bodies for toxicity. That's what they told me when they took me when I was 17, because I was wondering, they said they had to take tissue samples for that.
There was a story that I know I've told just about everybody who'd listen, and I can't remember if I mentioned it on our conversation or not, but I think I did. So when you're talking about that, it sets very heavy with me, because when my daughter was just learning how to speak, she had an experience where it was sort of a nightly event. She would look terrified, looking up at the ceiling and watching things that I couldn't see. And I said, what is going on? What are you seeing? What is it? And she said, they're the little things. They're back. They're all over. And I'm like, well, what do they look like? Because I couldn't see them. And she said, they're like little circles. And I said, are they all one color? Are they different colors? She said, they're different colors. And I said, what do they do? And she says, well, they float around and then they land on me. And I said, well, why do they land on you? She goes, Mama, you see these? These are my veins. This is where my blood is. I'm like, okay. She's 2.5 years old. And she tells me, I said, well, what are they doing with your blood? She says, they go inside there and they check to see if I'm healthy. And I said, do they do that to mommy? And she goes, no, silly, they already have yours. So that's always been at the back of my head in every situation when I talk to other people. I'm trying to feel them out and see like how many of my situations ring true. And just hearing that makes me think, my God, this is a universal situation. This is something that every aspect of humanity, no matter if you're black, white, brown, red, green, it doesn't matter. This is part of the human condition. We are being visited, and it's an astounding conversation any day of the week.
We are being exposed to toxicity in our environment, not only from nuclear fallout, but also from pollution. And it all makes sense to me now why they would take Betty and Barney and why they would take me and my mother. The reason for that is Betty and Barney lived right next door to a nuclear base and right across the river from a nuclear submarine base.
Yeah.
And they were less than 20 miles from my childhood home. Now, less than a mile from my childhood home was the Kingston Barrel Factory, and that ended up being a Superfund site. And neurotoxins were running into the groundwater and into the well water, into the lake. And we didn't know it at the time. We just knew that when they were burning those barrels out, it smelled awful. And my mother had us stay in the house on those days. We couldn't go outside to play. But it makes perfect sense to me that the ETs would be concerned about environmental toxicity in my body.
Mhm.
and try to help me to be healthy.
Wow.
Let me shift gears to kind of present day.
Mhm.
In June of this year, the UAP report came out.
Mhm.
It's for us as an enthusiast, ufologist, researcher, and all that. No one was surprised
Mhm.
with what they shared. But one thing that was clearly missing, not only the fact that they went back, what, Tiffany, or to
2004.
4, right, of evidence, but one thing that was not part of that was the mention of any experiences
Mhm.
Experiencers.
or experiences,
Experiences.
and yeah, and right, same. Why is that? Why was that,
Well, a
in your
few
opinion?
years ago, Lou Elizondo spoke to MUFON
Mm.
and said that they would not be mentioning uh, what is inside the craft. And I've spoken to some members of the military about that, military officers, and because I was speculating why. And the reason why is that they can't stop it. And they don't want to frighten the public. You imagine the public hysteria, especially in the South, where there are so many fundamentalist Christians who think that it's all demons. It would just be not good. The words that were coming to my mind were words I can't use on the air.
On this show you can, but I'll respect that the fact that you won't. But we get it. Yeah, I mean, you're going back to it's been clearly stated. Members of Congress, whatever, they don't want to go down that alien route because they tie it to demons or the devil, and
Yes. Yeah. And then something that was really disappointing to me is that report on June 25th pretended that we had no history with UFOs. The government launched some really significant studies in 1947 and 1948. By 1952, they had done a chi-square analysis on 1,594 UFO sightings out of 4,400 reports they'd collected. And out of that, 26.94% were in the true unknown category. They had 7 categories. And the longer the sighting, the better the witness, the more likely it was to be a real unknown. Then the largest study ever done was Blue Book Special Report number 14 in 1955, 3,201 cases, another chi-square analysis, 21.5% were true unknowns. And the chance of an unknown being a missed known was less than 1% in the chi-square analysis. So I wrote to Marco Rubio and about this and said, you probably are not aware of this, but here are the statistics. This is what happened. And he thanked me. I received a message back thanking me for that information. But I mean, I'm not happy with what the government's doing. And I noticed that after that report was issued on June 25th, the really nasty disinformants were reactivated. And they started on Travis Walton immediately. And right after Travis, I was told they're going to do Betty and Barney and do an attack on that. And they'll just make up ridiculous accounts for people who don't really know the truth and try to convince the public that Betty and Barney were a couple of nuts or it never happened or whatever. And
is this where we see and hear Kathleen, Tiffany say, you don't want to see that side of me? Or how does the Incredible Hulk. You don't want to see me angry. I butchered the joke, so but you get what I'm saying. We don't want to see her angry. Tiffany, there's some questions out there. Won't you you want to go to them?
Yeah. So Genghis Khan wants to know, did Betty and Barney have any other paranormal experiences later in life? Obviously, you said that there were some more abductions and missing time. Was there anything else that would be considered paranormal that's happened?
Absolutely. There is a paranormal overlay in UFO abduction cases. In my latest study of 516 experiencers with Dr. Don C. Donderi and Dr. Michael Austin Melton and Denise Stoner, we discovered that 60% of the experiencers had light orbs that seemed to have intelligence in their homes. And then 75% had the feeling that something unseen was walking on the bed. And sometimes right after an abduction experience or people taken to craft, there might be things that would fly off the shelf, or definitely electromagnetic interference in the home. I wrote about that in the Alien Abduction Files. Here I'm trying to remember the name of my own book.
And that was with Denise.
Denise wrote
Stoner.
part of it.
Okay.
And the case that I'm thinking of is a case that I investigated in New Hampshire and did the hypnosis on. And it was a case of intergenerational contact, and a lot of paranormal experiences too. But on the day after Jenny Henderson's abduction, when her 2 children were taken with her, she walked, first she took a shower. She had burns on her face and her back. And then she went to dry her hair and her blow dryer blew out. She went down and turned on a lamp and the lamp bulb blew out. Then she went to walk by the kitchen counter, and her son had kind of a little handheld game, battery operated game. It turned on automatically and started playing itself. Then she went to make pancakes for the family and had the electric mixer, the hand mixer, and that blew out too. So it was one thing after another, just blowing out that day.
That's a big sure sign that she doesn't need to do any domestic chores.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah.
I just can't do any of it. All of the stuff is not working, honey. I'm going to use that as my next excuse.
I was gonna say, I'll talk to Brent and see if that flies.
Yeah.
Go back real quick, Kathleen. You mentioned about, what was that thing about walking on the bed, or what?
The feeling that something unseen is walking on the bed.
See, Kevin?
I've had
that's also paranormal. It's not necessarily just EP contact related.
Yeah. I mean, that has been my, if there's such thing as an experience for me, that's the closest thing that has been going on in my life since I don't know, 10 years maybe, or something like that, where it literally seems like I have a 6-pound Yorkie, and it would feel like he was walking on the end of my bed, and eventually I would like, Reese, will you sit your ass down? Stop walking. I'm trying to sleep. And I'd look, he's not there. I'd get up, he's sleeping on the couch. I mean, sleeping. And then it just kept going. And I realized it's not my dog, it's something. And so, yeah. And I actually had it the other night too. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's funny. So Kathleen, there's another comment in here, and I'm going to start with one of them and go to I'm going in backwards. So Katie says it's naive to think that all life is love and light, and I sort of agree with that. Her second message, which was before it, I'm going to read it in this order. Some aliens do work with the Satanists underground in bases and do evil stuff. So some ideas that they're demons make perfect sense. And I think that based on the religious views of like Southern Baptists and very fundamental, like you said, these very spiritual people may have a hard time imagining that anything coming in the dark of night would be benevolent. It has to be this evil, malicious entity. I can see it in some regards because I was raised in a religious setting. But then again, there's a yin and a yang. There's a good and a bad. Have you noticed that there's more of a neutral tone to a lot of the experiences that are happening these days?
Most experiencers say that they've experienced both positive and negative, depending upon what ET they were interacting with. So, but we did ask if you could end your experiences today, would you? Among the 516 experiencers, 71% said no, they wouldn't end it.
And that was with the free. That was with free,
yeah,
correct?
That was with MUFON study.
That was MUFON study. Okay.
Free study was even higher. That was 83%, I believe, who wouldn't end it. Among the abductee group in MUFON study that I worked on with Dr. Dundari, it was 75% of the abductee group who did not want to end their experiences. So for the most part, I think the ETs are attempting to treat people better. They're healing people. They're communicating. They're doing things that they didn't used to do. But to speak to the woman who just wrote about the demonic part of it, sometimes I can be a little too curious. And I was investigating a case of these draconian reptilians who were taking this born-again Christian underground and to witness and experience horrific things. I'm not going to say anything else about that. It sounded like hell to me. And so I wanted to probe, is this really demonic? Is this really negative interdimensionals and not extraterrestrials? And so while I was doing that, this man said something to me that was so horrific about what he had observed that all of a sudden, all of that goodness, everything that felt good in my body just left immediately, like tingling, boom, gone. And immediately it was like a black cloud was hanging over me. And then my body started to ache. I started to have difficulty. I never have difficulty sleeping. I started to have problems sleeping. And then it finally started to speak to me. I had tried to get rid of it. I had holy water. I had crystals. I had a friend who was a minister who can remove these things, but she lives up in Tallahassee and I'm down near Orlando. So she doesn't come down that often. I was waiting for her to come. She couldn't remove it from a distance. She tried. And then finally, I was just fed up when it said to me, you're going to die soon. Why don't you just do it? And I said, that's it. That's it. This is not going to go on for one more day. And I got help right away from a person who could get it removed immediately. Wow. So I did not go another day with that. But it is real. It is real. And I got, the tingling is back, which I really enjoy, the tingling in the crown chakra.
It's terrifying to hear you say that, because I do know that there has been a negative entity and presence in my past. And, you go through the gambit of emotions. You go through the extreme state of fear to the point where you see what's going on, and then you actually pass out from how much fear that you have.
Mhm.
And then you come back and it's like, okay, we're going to do this again. And they come back and you have that same extreme fear. But each time that you have one of these experiences, it's almost like gauging your level of confusion, pain, fear. It's like gauging all of that energy that's coming from us. Sometimes I just feel like an electric bulb, like you were talking about earlier, all of these different electricities, impulses, and sometimes I just feel like I'm a drain, like they're draining me physically. And I think that that's sort of the entity that you're describing. It had that type of emotion, and I've had visits from them as well. But once I started to set boundaries and really take back my control, I think it took a lot of perseverance in order to do that.
I wrote about this, and I was looking for a solution in my book, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. And so I started to do research on light healers and rainbow healers, people who were working to remove these negative entity attachments from people. And I discovered that some of these reptilian entities are attaching to these workers. And it's very, very difficult to get rid of them for what I've read about it too. So it's just really important to, if it happens to you, if you have this negative thing, to get it removed. You can get it removed through a shaman, or ministers can do it too. Denise Stoner is the assistant to the director of the MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team. I used to be the director, but I've stepped down recently. And Denise is a paranormal expert, longtime investigator, and she has connections to the paranormal clergy too. So she has helped a lot of people who have these negative attachments. Shamans can do it. So just get rid of it. And one thing that can happen if you're in a lot of pain, if you're being treated with opioids, that will lower your vibrational frequency and allow these things to come in and attach. In India, they've done studies in India on, and if you have 3 alcoholic beverages in a row, it lowers your vibrational frequency. In India, they believe that all alcoholics have a negative entity attachment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Kevin, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I only drink certain nights, so I'm not. I got to show this. This is kind of cool because I think this might be the first question that we've taken. I'm showing it because I think it's the first question we've taken from Twitch or Twitch.
Oh, yeah, it is. Interesting.
Yeah, so, which looks like control, anon, delete. Yeah. Do you know if sleep paralysis is paranormal? What is the official stamp on that?
We all have sleep paralysis every night during our dream state. And those who wake up paralyzed and able to move only their eyes with a feeling of dread and shadowy figures overhead are just having an experience where your body's just out of sync for a brief period of time with your brain. And that happens. But
Is there a purpose for that? Is it just to keep you immobile while you're in a dream state so you're not killing your partner in the middle of the night?
Absolutely. So you won't hurt yourself or your partner during the night. And some people have these sleep disorders where they don't have sleep paralysis and need to be treated because they do harm themselves and others from this as they're working out their dreams, moving their body to do this. So you can go to my website, Kathleen-Marden.com. I have an article there that I've written, and it's on sleep paralysis and also hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, and how to gauge whether you're having these or you're actually having contact with extraterrestrials. We asked on MUFON's study that I worked on, have you experienced waking up paralyzed and able to move only your eyes? Well, I think it was something like 87 to 90% of everyone said yes, they'd had that experience. But then we said, have you been awake and you saw entities in your bedroom, and then have you become paralyzed?
Oh, sort of the reverse. Okay.
Yeah, so you're awake,
right,
and able to move before the paralysis sets in.
Right.
And I mean, that's the way it always happened to me. I'd be awake. And so I decided to ask that. And among the abductee group, it was, I think, around 67% said yes, they'd had that experience. It was lower among the experiencers overall.
You had mentioned sort of a tingling sensation when you have these experiences. I think this goes along with it. Tori wants to know, do any experiencers also report the hum? And I sort of have that sensation before I have a visit. I know that somebody's coming, and it's like your whole body sort of zings.
The majority of experiencers have some kind of premonition or feeling in their body or sensation or even sound to let them know that they're going to be visited.
Does that have to do with an implant, or does that just have to do with maybe some form of our consciousness checking in? It's like a pre-check-in.
All I can tell you is I'm not certain. But if I fool around with my implant, which is right here, then I can always hear this kind of a high-pitched sound in my head.
Do you buy into the Rh negative blood?
Well, that was another question that we asked. And among the general population, 15% in the United States are Rh negative. But
raise your hand, Tiffany.
Kevin, you just want to have me put on a hit list.
Among the experiencers overall, 31% were Rh negative. That's double the general population. And it was even higher. It was 34% for the abductee group being Rh negative. What that means is that the greatest majority of experiencers are Rh positive, but there is a significantly increased rate of Rh positive blood among experiencers.
Interesting.
I got a question here from our man Rodrigo. You might know this. Is Kathleen in contact with famous UFC MMA fighter Angela Hill? Is Angela affected by the phenomenon like her grandparents?
You know, I have wanted to be in contact with Angela Hill because she is either Barney's granddaughter or great-granddaughter. I'm not sure. Barney's sons, one is older than me, and I'm a septuagenarian, and Barney's other son is my age. So I'm wondering if I don't know if she's a granddaughter or a great-granddaughter to Barney. I've written to her on Facebook, Messenger, and she has not ever gotten back to me. I would really love to speak with her. I don't know if she's an experiencer too. I know that it runs on my Aunt Betty Hill's side of the family. I don't know about Barney's side of the family.
Ooh, What's next? Well, with looking ahead, um, to me, Kathleen, actually, not just to me, a lot of people, the three greatest questions: is there a God? What happens when we die? And are we alone in the universe? And I stick by this. I think, are we that? How close are we to really getting the answer that we're not alone? Now, I know present company, we're convinced, but until they arrive and really announce their presence with authority, or not authority, but that they're here, is that going to happen sooner than later?
I don't know. It all depends. No, a group, a council that I have done an experiment with and met and talked to telepathically has indicated that they're not going to let us destroy this planet again. If it looks like we're going to have a nuclear war, they're going to intervene. That's what they say. So, if that happens, then they will intervene, but they don't want to. They don't want to because of the impact that it would have on humanity. And we're really not ready. We're still very primitive. They're very concerned about our barbaric behavior. In fact, they told me this, and they've told many other experiencers this too. I've gotten the same reports on the open-ended questions on the studies that I've worked on. And that is, they say that our technological progress is out of sync with our spiritual development. And when they see that happen, the beings on that planet oftentimes don't survive. We destroy ourselves. And they don't want to see that happen. Yeah. So they're attempting to raise spirituality. Sorry.
Are we unique in the universe? Do you think that there's something special about us and our planet and our environment?
Well, we live on a beautiful planet. It just rich in vegetation and animals of all types. And so I think that in a sense, we're unique in that way. The planet is, because so many planets might have a binary star system and life on a planet, but maybe in the twilight most of the time. And not to have those bright sunny days and the mountains and the snow and the kind of atmosphere that we have. So, I don't know if we're unique in that way or not. I've been given no indication of that from anybody. But they are interested in us for some reason. They're really, I think a lot of it has to do with being fearful that we're going to destroy ourselves and everything else. It's not just humans, it's everything.
We're as divided of a world as we've ever been. There's no gray area. It's left or right. It's yes or no. It's, yeah.
Are you saying that we're back to 1961?
In some ways, yeah. And the thing is that the truth is that hatred, that mindset never went away. It got, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just, it wasn't
tamped down.
It was calmed down. It was, I'm not trying to get political here, but a few years ago, the floodgates opened back up because there was a group of people that or leadership or whatever that made it okay for these people to come out, and
they're creating derision and division.
And it's worked for their agenda. It has worked.
Do you believe that we live in a collective consciousness?
I do. I think the universe is one mind.
I think we live in a collective consciousness, and that the vast majority of emotions that go into that collective consciousness determines what happens here. And I know that Mother Earth is crying, and I've been appealing when I lecture, when I speak on shows. I've been appealing to everyone to try to raise that vibrational frequency. How to do that? You can do it through prayer. You can protect yourself, and you can meditate and try to connect to send love, or something else that I've tried. And that is, if somebody makes me angry, I used to go, to myself about that person. But now I just silently project love toward them. I don't say I love you. I don't do anything. I just project love in their direction. And it really makes a difference. And I think that if we were all to do that, that our planet would become a better place.
I like where you're thinking.
Yeah.
I think we all need a little bit more of that mentality and that thought process in our world today. We are, like Kevin said, we're being bogged down daily on the news, and we have been for the past year and a half, how negative, all negative, everything that I see on TV is negativity. I've just started to turn it off because it starts eating away at your soul. Hearing these things on a daily basis, it's like a bad parent telling their kid how horrible of a person they are every single day. They're going to believe it, and you hear it over and over. Tracy is awesome. Tracy is positive. Oh, A positive.
Oh, does the A stand for Austin? I am Austin positive.
I thought you meant I'm a positive person, but no, she's. But yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, and I can appreciate you sharing that with us and our listeners.
I think if everyone would just do that, just once a day, maybe before when you go to bed at night, is a good time to do it if you don't have time otherwise. But just to do that it will make all the difference. There were children who have gotten together to meditate, to stop war, and they've stopped it, to lower crime rates. They've lowered the crime rates. It does work.
Do you think that children have a better possibility of sharing that type of emotion with the world? Do you think they have a special, like a closer connection with Creator in order to do that?
Yes, I do. They haven't had all of the experiences that adults have had. So in a sense, they're still pure and innocent, and they have that closer connection maybe to spirit than adults. But we all need to do this, and it's it would be great if children would do it as well.
Unfortunately, I think the reality too, when it comes to our kids, social media, I mean, the influence that the internet, we're going down a path I don't really want to go down to, but you alluded to the fact too that they're watching, and I'm a believer that I'll speak for me, if I start drifting off to one extreme, I'll realize it and I'll find a way to get back to the middle of the road. I think that's what we're doing, as a whole. That we are going in such an extreme one way or the other that it might be time that they do come and try to bring us back to the center. If we can be, I buy into this notion. I don't know where people stand. I I'm a science guy. The world, this Earth is 4 billion years old, or whatever. It's billions of years old. It's not thousands, it's billions. They've talked about too that, a simulation or different, that what we're doing right now potentially happened. This same thing happened 10 billion years or whatever happened exactly in the past. And then something, there was a redo button, and then it all started back over again. And if they are keepers or friends or whoever outside of this planet is the one controlling the keys, I'm what was it, Reagan's famous quote that in the, what was it, 87,
We would all come together under
if
an alien threat.
I mean, are we in I don't know if it's the alien threat, but is it something to that point, to that extreme where that we're going to potentially experience to change our mindsets to be a little more compassionate and friendly to each other. Wishful thinking, maybe.
We definitely need that.
Kev is right
Kev
on
is
target.
right on target.
Yeah. Even was it a blind squirrel? What did they say? What's that? I've not been good on my jokes tonight.
No.
It's because I'm trying to, be a good guy tonight. Good boy.
Yeah. Kathleen, he's on his best behavior tonight.
You too, Tiffany. You too. All right. What projects, stuff you got coming up next?
I'm working on another book. So just slowly, and I've been just I'm back doing hypnosis.
Now, that's the other thing that we really didn't talk about too much. You're a practitioner of regression hypnosis and quantum healing.
Yes.
See, that's something we've had a guest on before, but can you describe what quantum healing entails?
Yes, it's different from traditional hypnosis because the person comes in and they come with 10 to 15 questions that they want to ask their higher self or their super consciousness, and also with healing requests. So we just do the regular hypnosis session, the induction, the regression, and all of that. But when that is finished, then we tap into the higher self. And I ask those questions, and the person answers in the third person as the higher self, and gives the answers to the questions. And then I ask the higher self to help in the healing of this individual. So the individual, the higher self will say yes. And so I always start at the top of the head, and we work down the body, and the higher self tells me when he or she has completed the healing in that part of the body. And usually I end up, I don't know why, I'm just supposed to be sitting there, but I always end up like this with my arms out, because I can feel this tingling coming down through my crown chakra and out through my arms, through my hands. And the person underneath who's lying there feels heat, a lot of heat coming from my hands. And somehow they're healed.
Wow. I sort of wonder if everybody has the ability to heal themselves. I know that's sort of the idea behind that process, but have you seen very many people healed from this process in person?
Yes, there are a few who haven't been healed. Dolores Cannon, who developed the technique, used to say that some people made an agreement before they came into this life that they were going to have this affliction. And so if it was a contractual agreement, then they might continue to have that affliction.
Mhm.
And if people think, oh, this is ridiculous, it's not going to work, but I'm going to try to see if it will work, it's not going to work for them.
Mhm.
They have to believe it. They have to be open to it.
Mhm. That has to do with religious healings as well.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. In a way, for me, it's sort of like a religious healing.
Mhm.
I spoke with a woman who is a medium, and she's a hypnotist as well. And she told me that Mother Mary was channeling through me.
Have you spoken to Christopher Bledsoe about
Yeah.
his shining lady?
Mhm.
Do you feel that that's maybe the same person or being?
I don't know. But I think that she's probably a holy
question.
being.
Mhm.
I mean, she seems that way to me. And Chris thinks of the ones who contact him as angels.
Mhm. We talk a lot about having terminology issues. We don't have the same words to describe these events. I wasn't educated in the right words to use, and it's very difficult to describe your personal experiences. Do you think that we'll ever have a dictionary of the better terms of usage for alien abductions?
Now, there's an idea for a book. I don't know. I don't know.
There you go.
Okay, let's work on that.
Oh man.
It'd be good
Want
to
to
work
keep
on.
the timing of tonight to Kathleen's schedule. So you mentioned your website, you mentioned projects, TV. You've been doing your TV rounds too.
Yes, I've
Give
been
it-
working more and more on television, on the History Channel and the Travel Channel.
Those are the
Yeah,
only 2 channels I watch anymore.
basically more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's see, that's the other thing too. Whenever I see or hear someone say, "I don't think we're ready for the announcement and stuff," it's on every channel you almost watch. It's on
Mhm.
main. I mean, since the videos and stuff came out in December of 2017, and this report, mainstream media. 60 minutes. We've talked about this, Tiffany. 60 minutes on a Sunday night on network television, not
Mhm.
cable, network. Had a show. I mean, did a
Yeah.
segment on it with, a legit with Fravor, all these the Nimitz and the Tic Tac.
Mhm.
No, I don't buy. I think we're ready. I do.
I think we're ready for limited disclosure.
But is it limited? Even limited disclosure is still disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess some people still need to be spoon fed, huh?
Yes. Yeah. I think that the general public, a lot of the general public needs guidance
Mhm.
so that
And
they'll
then
know that they're not going to be harmed, that and the ETs are they have changed as far as I know from all the people that I've talked to, and when I was the director of MUFON's experiencer resource team. Um, the typical contact is different than it was years ago. We were even questioning whether uh, sperm and ova is being taken any longer. If I did speak with a woman a couple of days ago who she woke up with a bleeding navel and something coming out of her navel that looked like it was bleeding, and it was wiped with uh, maybe gauze, and there was gauze still there, a couple of little strings. But
Interesting.
so maybe she was taken and that was done. But it's very rare as far as I know now.
I mean, if the same ET is doing all the visitations, I would get that. But there, we're hearing the stories, or that there's different species. So wouldn't I mean they're all not following one leader, and they're like, okay, this is the rule. You all can go do your probing and abductions, but these are the protocols. Are they all answering to one person or thing?
We don't know.
And you're right. We don't know. So my thing is that they're probably all different, potentially all different. So they all have a different agenda, whether it's,
it depends on who you're talking to sometimes, because they do, there is this suggestion that there's a galactic federation and there are rules and laws to abide by.
Yeah, that's where I was alluding to. Yeah.
Yeah. No, do you believe in that avenue of thought, Kathleen?
Well, I used to think that it was ridiculous, but then in 2016, I was invited to take part in an experiment with a man from who grew up in England and had been in contact with two non-humans, human-looking, very large humans, from the time he was a little boy. And he had been introduced to this galactic federation. It was called the Council of Eight. And they're just one council in the large federation. So we went, researchers, experiencers, skeptics, and we took equipment, and we met once a month for 2 years, and we could ask questions. And we made contact. They showed us orbs, they showed us craft. We were able to measure an increase in the temperature in the room when they came into that room, a significant increase in the temperature. I had the one scientist who wanted to communicate with me, he came close to me. I could feel the strong tingling throughout my body. He communicated with me telepathically, gave me information. And I believe that it is real. There's just been so much confirmation among the group that I was with.
So there is a sheriff in town or out of town.
Yes, but the group said that there are no reptilians in the councils.
Oh, in the councils.
In the councils.
Gotcha.
He said that they were invited, but they do not want to cooperate.
Oh, interesting. So they're on the naughty list, and they just want to go by their own rules and don't want to play with everybody at the playground.
Right. Apparently.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for people based on what you've learned throughout the years? Do you have any suggestions on the best way to make contact for people who are interested? Guidelines or just suggestions?
Well, there is a group run by Costa Macreus. Macreus. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but there is a group, and you can join that and find out where the CE5 groups are in your state, where it's taking place, and try to be part of that group.
It's called ET Let's Talk Community.
ET Let's Talk Community.
Yes.
And
your people,
they've been having success.
They're an amazing group, and I'm glad that you brought them up. We just registered our event. We're having an event next weekend here, and we just registered our event with the ET Let's Talk Community. So they are going to have our contact information, even though it's not an open event for people to come physically. It will be available for everyone to join in virtually. So check that out. We will definitely have them on board with us, and keeping all of the other people in mind around the world who are trying to make human initiated contact. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. And trying to raise the collective consciousness too. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Part of his mission. So I think that's really important.
Good.
Kevin,
think,
did you want to do the rapid fire?
let's do that. I think she'd be fun.
Okay.
I
So
gotta
we
keep
we
talking.
have started
Mhm.
to ask really just random questions at the end of our show to our guests so that people can get to know you a little bit better on a more personal level, not just because of what you've studied and researched your whole life. So we have a few questions. You're free to take as long as you like until I go.
Yeah. I mean,
And they're
don't make me
painless.
play the Jeopardy song, Kathleen. All right. These are painless fun. First concert you attended?
It was at the University of New Hampshire, and I think it was the Allman Brothers.
Oh, wow. Yes. Um, this is, I'm curious. I'm definitely curious in knowing this one. Texting or talking? Are you a big texter?
Texting.
Are you? Okay.
I've got one.
Go.
If you had your druthers, would you rather be at a beach or at a pool?
At a beach.
Okay.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas with my grandchildren.
Favorite season?
Oh, fall and winter. Really fall when it cools off here in Florida. It's different when I lived in New Hampshire. I had a different favorite season.
Yeah, you're making snow angels probably a lot up there. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Orange pineapple. But I also love dark cherry.
Tiffany, where are you going?
Okay, this is a COVID question. What would you prefer? Not being able to smell anything for the rest of your life or not being able to taste anything?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's the same. If you can't smell anything, you can't taste anything. They're linked.
They're intercombined? Okay.
Yeah. That would be horrible.
It would be horrible.
Giving presents or getting presents?
Giving.
Ask permission or beg for forgiveness? She's a rebel.
Oh,
She's
that's
gonna
a
ask,
tough one because I am a rebel. I pretty much do what I want, and I don't care.
Don't care. Yeah.
I do what is right. Or what I think is right.
What is a Kathleen pet peeve?
What is what?
A pet peeve.
My pet peeve.
Yeah.
People who care only about themselves and not about other people. They're constantly drawing attention to themselves and showing off and pretending to be something that they're not.
What is the guilty pleasure of Kathleen Marden?
Ice cream.
Toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
Who do you have as a role model for your life?
Oh gosh, Stanton Friedman was a role model for me. Margaret Mead was a big role model for me too.
If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
Probably the Roaring 20s.
Hear me roar. All right, Tiffany, ask the last one.
Okay. Okay. This one is from my daughter, Lily. In your heart of hearts, do snitches get stitches?
She's a rebel. She's like, I'm taking them out.
Snitches get stitches.
She's 8. That's the question she came up with. Yes.
What goes on in that
I
house
suppose
of
if
yours?
they get beaten up for snitching, then they could get stitches.
Let me ask the last one. Where is your happy place?
Oh, my office, right here where I am. I'm
Very
happy
cool.
here. I have doors that look out over the lake, and I watch the wildlife and make friends with the sandhill cranes and their babies, and
Oh, that's
little
sweet.
lizards that run around all over the place who are doing really good work, eating mosquito larvae and things
Good
like
job.
that. Yes.
I do enjoy that as well. I have we always have bugs in our house. Guess what those bugs are?
Roaches?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, I raised praying mantis.
Praying mantis. That's right, too. I think you told me that.
I did.
Yes, but in Florida, it's common to have roaches in the house.
Yeah, nope. I
But
think they
it's a
call them
praying
something
mantis.
else down there. What do they call them? Water somethings. Can't remember what my dad
Down
used to call them
there,
something different in Florida.
the
Yeah,
roaches
and I
in
can't
Florida,
remember the
can't you
name of
like
it.
strap a saddle on them and ride them?
Right,
That's
they're big. There are some big ones.
water. I can't remember what
Yeah,
my
you're
dad
right.
called them.
There is some. Yeah, it's
There's a different name for them, I think. Anyway.
Mhm.
Oh my
Praying
goodness.
mantis. Denise Stoner, with whom I wrote the alien abduction files, has had lifelong contact with mantis type entities in the grays. But when she would come over to visit and be in my office, we'd always see a praying mantis on the screen door.
I
This
believe
was
it
amazing.
100%. When we've discussed this in the past, I feel like I'm sort of a witch and they're my familiars. Instead of having black cat, I have 2 black cats too, but I feel like they're always around. I have people sending me pictures of praying mantis all over the world every single day. I am the bug lady. So,
and they all have different names.
of course they have different names.
Well,
We've probably kept about 100 of them as pets throughout the past 7 years.
Wow.
But
I would
we've sent
challenge
out
you to be able to list every
all of their
name.
names. I
Yes,
bet you Maddie could.
probably. That would be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Oh, we have to write their names on their cages because I forget their names. And apparently they have to have the correct name. I don't know. They're having identity crisis if they don't have their name listed on their cage.
Mm. And
That's
you
what
would know
happens.
those names if they got swapped from different cases.
Madeline does, and she gets very, very upset.
She would know. That'd be nice.
Well, Kathleen, this has been a really fun evening, and I am so glad that you were able to join us and share about your aunt and uncle who were revolutionary in many ways. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. There was so much information that you shared tonight that I had never even
I love
heard.
it.
So
Yes.
I really appreciate you coming on and spending time with us this evening.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation and the questions. And my books are on my website at kathleen-marden.com. If you would like an autographed copy, you can order it there. They're available in all different formats, at like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other online bookstores. And I also list on my website my upcoming conferences.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Again, in our show description, guys, people are listening or watching us on the video or will listen to us on the podcast platform. Once that drops, her webpage, there's an Amazon link as well. Kathleen, pleasure was ours. And I would definitely love to do it again because it sounds like you're going to keep doing your thing and keep doing new things. And you're going to be on TV and we're going to keep watching you. And the Betty and Barney story will continue. And there's still potentially new information that's going to keep coming out.
There's new information in the new book. Scientists have continued to work. I've been working with scientists since the first book was published. There's a lot of new information that's very exciting.
And we're excited. Can't wait for it. So great stuff tonight. Tiffany,
I know that you at least sold one book tonight. Dawn said that she's already ordering. So
Oh, great.
Cool.
you'll get my order tomorrow and hers.
So, such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
That was fun. And
That
you're right,
was.
Tiffany. You touched on there were a few things that she mentioned that I had no idea, and not that I felt like I was the expert with the Betty and Barney Hill story, but it's the first, if you will, and we didn't go. One question I really wanted to ask, and she said, I brought this up pre-show, and I wanted to definitely be respectful of the question. Is that, was there an alien interest, an ET interest, because of the fact they were an interracial couple? And and she said that she has told that ad nauseum. And I guess not that I probably have seen every show, but I hadn't caught that angle. So,
well, I always wondered why my activity had amped up after I moved in with my new husband, Brent. And I think it was because of that protective nature that he had towards me. I'd never really had somebody who was that protective over me and would fight something that they couldn't see in order to protect me. I think that, it has to do with relationships and new activity with an abductee could be potentially life-changing for, future generations. So
I want to show this real quick. We're wrapping up here. Michael, thanks for hanging out with us. I'm on negative snitches that call out charlatan get gifts from me. Other than that, yeah, they get stitches. That is a great question.
Yes.
We didn't do this at the beginning of the show, and I literally was like, damn it, Kevin, we didn't do it, but we didn't do the roll call.
I know. Dang it.
Just as a parting gift to our audience, say the names just so that they're on the show.
Oh my goodness. All right. We've got Ron, we've got Dawn, we've got Yuffie, we have Michael Tarr, we have Marco, Charles Smar. My gosh, everybody's here.
Rodrigo was on. Yeah.
Rodrigo was on. Yes.
Maria.
Tracy Austin. Oh, there were a lot of. Let's see. There was a new listener tonight too. Let's see, Genghis, American Road Warrior.
Kate, was it KD?
KD, yeah. New person.
And then there was the Twitch, the person on Twitch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. It was a fun night.
Good night. So again, we're a little over a week away from this event that Tiffany. I remember us having this conversation like 6 months. Like, this is all the shit we got to do. It's going to be here before we know it. Well, it's here.
It's here. I know. I've been making sure that I have enough beverages and food and toilet paper.
That's
soap.
That's over.
The toilet paper that goes over, not under. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, oh my gosh.
We'll see next week. Just a heads up. We are doing a show next Tuesday, which is before the event.
What Kevin thinks is going to happen. I'm already feeling the stress, guys. Oh, there's Bobby. He just checked in and said, "Hey, I'm here too." Hey, Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby, love you, Bobby. Yeah, I got there for Bobby. Why does Bobby get that? Why does he?
I don't know. Maybe because he always talks about how nerdy I look with glasses. So I'm gonna rock it.
You are rocking it. So yeah, we're gonna do it. We'll have a show next week. We'll definitely. I wouldn't say heavy. Yeah, we'll promote the event quite a bit next week as well. Race Hobbs is our guest next week. Yeah, Race.
It should be good.
Should be good.
See, Kevin.
Diva glass.
Oh my goodness. You guys are awesome. I'm so glad that we get to share our Tuesday nights with you all. You all have been very interactive and Like I said, great guest. So we will see you next Tuesday night with Race Hobbs as our guest. And I am going to be pulling out all of my hair for the event next week. So stay tuned for that to see Tiffany bald. It's going to be great.
If you please will do this for us, our wonderful friends out there, give us a thumbs up. Keep sharing your comments. Follow, like, subscribe to us. Our show is all on the social media platforms. There is a link, a link tree link in our description that will let you find all of our social media, the podcast platforms as well. So as always, we enjoy hanging out with our friends. Great guest tonight in Kathleen Marden. Tiffany, you were great as usual. Great questions. And we keep doing this because we enjoy doing it. This is our, it's very therapeutic, I think. And it's just fun, just something different. So American Railroad Race is departed. I think he actually has departed from KGRA. So I don't know what kind of questions and conversation we'll have next week, but Race, it'll be fun. He's a good guy. All right, for Tiffany Mack, Kevin Hale, wishing everyone a great rest of your night, rest of the week. Universal Secrets, Tiffany, we are signing off. Peace out. This has been Universal Secrets.